Welcome to the program. I'm Okpayemi Owosheni. A new household expectation survey by the Central Bank of Nigeria has revealed that 65.5% of Nigerian households believe a reduction in lending rates will be the best for the economy. The survey conducted in February 2025 highlights public perception of key economic indicators, including inflation, interest rate, exchange rate, and economic confidence over the next 6 months. According to the findings, only 10.4% of respondents believe that interest rates should increase, while 12.5% prefer them to remain unchanged. And Brazil's central bank has hiked its key interest rate 1 point to 14.25%, a 9-year high, as it seeks to contain inflation in Latin America's largest economy. It was the 5th consecutive increase and counter to leftist President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva's calls for a lower rate to boost economic growth. The bank's monetary policy committee cited a challenging external environment for its decision, as well as persistent inflation domestically and signs of an imminent moderation in growth. The rate was last this high between July 2015 and October 2016, when Brazil was in the grips of an economic recession. We'll go on a break now and be back with company news. Welcome back. Nigerians may begin to experience an increase in the price of premium energy products, diesel and petrol, as the Dangote petroleum refinery temporarily halts the sale of petroleum products in Naira. The company in a statement said the decision is necessary to avoid a mismatch between their sale proceeds and crude oil purchase obligations, which are currently denominated in the US dollars. The $20 billion refinery based in Lagos, Nigeria, says the sale of its products in Naira have exceeded the value of Naira-denominated crude it has received from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. The African Development Bank Group President Akinwumi Adesina has announced plans to launch a $500 million facility designed to unlock $10 billion in financing for smallholder farmers and small agribusiness enterprises across Africa. Speaking at the high-level conference on scaling finance for smallholder farmers in Nairobi, Adesina reviewed that the bank's management is currently consulting with its board of directors on establishing this groundbreaking facility. We'll go on a break now, but when Money Matters return, we'll be discussing explosion in Rivers State. I'll bring you details after this break. Welcome back. An explosion has rocked a section of the Trans-Niger pipeline in Bodon community in Gokana local government area of Rivers State. The explosion occurred late on the 17th of March near the Bodo-Boni Road under construction. Now we could see thick black smoke was seen bellowing into the atmosphere, with a raging fire spreading fast into the mangrove from a video that emerged on the 18th of March. The TNP is a federal transport line that supplies oil to the Boni export terminal in Rivers State. The TNP transports 150,000 barrels of crude oil per day to Boni export terminal using a pipeline network. Another explosion also occurred at a pipeline manifold in the community around the Ogba, Egema, and Ndoni local government area of Rivers State, making it 2 explosions in the space of 1 week. Let's now discuss the economic implications of this explosion. Financial expert Femi Oladele now joins me on the program. Thank you for joining me on the program, Mr. Oladele. Now, the disturbing incident of pipeline vandalism by militants and the explosion of the Trans-Niger pipeline explosion in Rivers State has caused significant damage to the infrastructure and disrupted oil export. What impact do you think this would have on Nigeria's economy?
Thank you, and thank you for having me again. It's very unfortunate that we have gone back to the era of rising vandalism, especially with regards to the fact that we are looking at improving petroleum production, crude production in Nigeria, and we have not even met our target. And so it's unfortunate that this is happening. And generally, the direct impact is that definitely it's going to significantly reduce our oil production output. Secondly, I think that it's going to increase tensions between the government and the people. You know, many times right now, even generally, we understand that there is tension between the people and government. Now that tension is going to increase because the government might want to deploy security, and that would affect the trust that the government is trying to build with the people of that community. So I see it as a lose-lose situation right now. There is no good that can come out of vandalism at all.
Now, from records that we've seen over time, the Shell-operated Trans-Niger pipeline has frequently been the target of attacks by militants and saboteurs, which has resulted in significant revenue losses. Now, what proactive measures do you think should be taken against future attacks on Nigeria's critical energy assets away from Rivers State?
Thank you. Also, like I mentioned, it's the same thing that we have been talking about. If you recall, the electricity sector also there were cases of vandalism, and I believe significantly that if we look at the root cause, then we might get better local solutions. We cannot import solutions. We cannot just deploy the military. That will not work. We can also not just deploy interactions and conversations around it. I believe that we need a combination of these issues to be able to resolve vandalism, especially the one you just mentioned, which is peculiar to oil installations and all of that. But if the government is going to be sincere with the people, I believe that there are root causes. And I have always mentioned public policy is a difficult terrain. I would never go and vandalize an electricity installation or an oil installation now. I would definitely not do that because I'm gainfully employed and I have plans for the future for myself. When people are pushed to the wall and they don't have that kind of balance in their lives, then they are open to manipulations by people who want to achieve a certain odd goal against the government, against the people for their selfish reasons. I understand practically that just anyone cannot just go and and vandalize oil assets. We understand that they have backings. We also understand that there are people who are funding their activities, but people who have balance in their lives, then it will be more difficult for those people who are using them to use them. So I believe education, health, infrastructure, social services, if we can improve on those ones, then I think that it begins to take people out of poverty, begins to increase their level of education and helps them to be out of reach for people who are fighting against the government or against the people to use them to achieve their goals. So if the government would see it, it's a combination. Yes, face this current challenge headlong, but also look at the root causes and see how we can approach it from all sides. I learned something from biology that is good for public policy. Biology tells us that when we have an attack in our body system, the white blood cells all gather around and isolate that part. And that's what sometimes lead to boil and all of that. So that's the same way we need to treat this. Face it headlong and from all sides, the educational side, talking to traditional rulers, political leaders, also providing services that increase people's dignity, providing opportunities for education to increase their level of understanding. A few days ago, I talked about ownership with respect to infrastructure in Nigeria. If I know that when I destroy an asset, my money, my taxes is going to be used to uh, rebuild that asset, I'm more likely to be circumspect and not want to do that. So that understanding is limited right now in Nigeria. And so I believe that we have to attack it on all sides. It's not a one-side approach. We cannot say, oh, just taking the military, moving. We cannot also say that we'll just talk about conversations around the team. We have to face it from all sides and to be able to win the battle.
These disruptions comes at a critical time as the Nigerian government ramps up oil production to meet Nigeria's OPEC plus quota and also boost revenue amid economic challenges we are witnessing in the country at this time. What do you think should be the government's next line of action?
Okay, so with respect to what just happened in Rivers State, I'm trying to take away or isolate the political situation. the oil issue with respect to that. And like I mentioned previously, the government has appointed someone who has military background. I hope that this person, uh, IBAS or IBAS, would be able to take proactive steps to stem the tide of further escalations, especially with respect to oil installations. But like I said, it might be it can be aggression, it can be transfer of aggression. We don't know yet. The authorities are still working on detecting what caused it and to see if there are possible links, political links to what is happening currently in Rivers State. I also cannot talk about that at this time. But what I can say right now is that even if we want to achieve, and that's why I would have loved if the government was more pessimistic with respect to their goals for the year, but that is past. We have to talk about moving forward. I think the government right now should see how we can resolve that issue as soon as possible and not just using one approach, like I mentioned.
Now, we've spoken about the consequences for Nigeria as a country. Now, what do you think will be the economic consequences for the local communities in Rivers State, especially Gokana local government area where the explosion occurred?
Yeah, so I think that the proclamation only affects significantly the executive arm of government as well as the legislative arm of government. The president specifically mentioned that the judiciary can continue to carry on their duties. And in that sense, I would assume that local governments also duly elected can continue to carry on their duties. But we understand that there is also a political dimension to that because at this time we don't currently have democratically elected local government officials. But I think that it's a conundrum that is multifaceted. We cannot speak to it economically and ignore the political implications. We can also not talk about the fact that this has set the state back many years because the development that should have gotten to they have used more than 1 year, I think even up to 2 years in this fight between both parties, and it's not good for the state. So economically, it's not good. Investors want to stay in environments that are peaceful so that they can do their business. There is a popular saying among entrepreneurs that entrepreneurs are not scared of risk. What they are scared of is uncertainty. And Rivers State has provided lots of uncertainties. And so businesses would find it very hard to thrive in that kind of a situation. So economically, I would say it has affected them. So imagine those who have had intentions to do business with the government. Now, maybe there are even things that have been signed with some contractors, with some vendors, to provide services, to deliver goods to the government. That has been cancelled at this time. So it's definitely going to be affecting economic activities. The extent and reach, I cannot say now, but I definitely understand that many people who rely on government services might be significantly impacted, and that's not good for business.
All right, so I know you mentioned it briefly while you were speaking, but I want you to speak extensively on it. So, do you think these incidents likely would affect investors' confidence in Nigeria's oil and gas industry generally, especially considering the recent threats by militant groups?
No, I don't think this particular situation is huge enough to create that kind of scare for investors. Investors in the oil and gas sector, they're already used to the terrain. Even this is smaller compared to that time when Yemi Osibajo had to go to the river, to the Niger Delta to make an agreement with them. So this particular one, except we're looking at it comprehensively from the beginning, it's not significant enough to scare investors. They already know the risks involved and they have been there many times. So I don't think that's significant. But having said that, whenever there is this, there is the tendency for withdrawal, there's a tendency for reassessment where investors would want to be sure or certain that the investment is still safe and that it's a wise decision. So I believe that many of them would have gone back to reassess the risk involved and to see if the investment is safe. You know, unlike people who fall for MMM and other Ponzi schemes, investors in that sector with heavy capital, they don't just make rash decisions. They would have done lots of research, lots of analysis would have gone into it to say, okay, if I stay a bit, am I still, is the chance high that I'm going to be able to recoup my investment? And that the fact is that yes, that would be happening. And you know, by the appointment that has been made now, someone in the military, we understand that that might give some kind of credence to say, okay, security would improve in coming days. Also, we have started seeing from the tone of rendering that the two factions, I mean the Wiki faction and the same faction, the way they have been speaking lately has it's not like tensioned like before. Few days to now, their conversations were tough, hard words, and all of that. Those words are becoming milder. So I believe that there'll be significant peace in the region. Also, many people from the region have started coming up to speak and say, see, you guys are disturbing the peace in this place. You're not allowing us to develop and all of that. So I believe that very soon, even before the 6 months uh, ends, that significant progress would have been made to restore peace and normalcy in that region. So it won't scare investors generally. There will be those who will have reservations. There will be those who would think of pulling out, but it's a fertile ground. It's a place flowing with milk and honey, the oil sector, I mean, in Nigeria, especially in the Niger Delta. So it's not enough to scare people. And like I always advocate, there are when entrepreneurs make the most during challenges, it's not when things are rosy that entrepreneurs make the most. They make it most. You'll be surprised that during COVID, there were people that were reporting 10 times, 100 times their previous profits. So it's not, this situation is not significant enough to scare investors, in my opinion.
Now, given that oil theft significantly impacts Nigeria's oil production and export capacity, what direct effect could a reduction in oil theft have on Nigeria's fiscal health, particularly regarding oil revenue dependency and budgetary allocations for social development in the country?
Okay, so like I say generally that if you look at public policy issues, oil theft is bad and it has to be condemned, stands condemned. I would never support oil theft. But also we understand that that has given the government the impetus to begin to look at other sectors that can bring in money. You see many state governors now, especially added to it, the local government autonomy, have started focusing significantly on agriculture, on taxes, and other sources of income or revenue for their states. So, on a side, it's a bad thing that has battered good results. But if we can reduce or eliminate or reduce oil theft in Nigeria, definitely that increases our potential for export. It means that we're better able to meet our export uh, quota. It means more FX for the government. It also means more money goes down to the state governments as well as the local governments in Nigeria. So it's good for us generally. But like I believe the government cannot say that they don't know where oil theft happens. You know, I have this experience that I usually share many times. When electrical installations are vandalized, I ask people, I have a PhD, but I can never go near a transformer. Why? I don't have the skills. So when those things happen, it happens from the inside because I don't even know where a petroleum line is. I don't know where a crude line is. So how do I even go and start vandalizing? That means that there is information, there is capacity. Those who do it, those who steal oil, they know they have information and they have capacity to also do it. I don't even have that information. I don't have capacity, so I can't do it. And so we have to look inside. Today, while I was in around town, I saw an institute that I didn't know exists in Nigeria. It's an institute on building and road research. And I was surprised because I've never heard of that institute before, but it exists. So there are areas in Nigeria, there are stakeholders in Nigeria that needs to be talked to, needs to be sanctioned for oil theft, except we don't want to be sincere with ourselves. There are conspiracy theories that have said, oh, those in government are those perpetrating this with support from even military people and all of that. Those are speculations, except they are brought to limelight. We can assume, we can say that these things are happening, we can postulate those things, but the reality is that if we don't see it red-handed, then if they are not caught red-handed, then we cannot say those things are happening, even if they do happen. So I believe that oil theft is bad, and the government knows what to do to stop it. And I also believe that when it is stopped or reduced minimally, then, or maximally rather, then we're going to have better results economically and meet our quota.
Now, just before I let you go, Mr. Oladile, how significant is the potential impact of this disruption on the country's oil output? And what consequences might this have for Nigeria's fiscal stability and ability to meet budget projections?
So, definitely. But you know, what this government has said with respect to their $1 trillion um, aspiration is that they even want to focus more on the non-oil sector. While that is significant and true, I don't think we have the infrastructural base to achieve that without oil. So oil still forms a significant part of our, not forgetting the fact that sometime in the past we have swapped future oil for loans. So we also have that question and we have that hanging over our necks. But generally, it's going to affect fiscally. I believe that if we are unable to achieve our oil production targets, then definitely it means that we have to borrow more or reduce our budgets. Secondly, it means that some projects that have been earmarked to be done will be abandoned. And you understand the issue with abandoned projects in Nigeria. It takes time for them to be revived. And at the time they are reviving it, those projects would require significant higher funding, and that's not good for our economy at all. So it's not good now, it's not good tomorrow, because if we cannot meet those targets, especially for oil revenue, then our budget will be significantly impacted. And if our budget is significantly impacted, it means that ordinary Nigerians too will definitely be significantly impacted, and that's not good for us, especially where we stand now, given the FX rates, the fluctuations in inflation, the rising inflation figures, and everything that we are seeing around. So the government has a lot of work to do at this time. And my recommendation with respect to this is to tackle this before it blows up in our faces. If we don't tackle it now, where we can still contain it and still achieve good success, by the time it might be a time of amputation. And you know, when you have amputated the body parts, it's not like the original anymore. We can still work on it now and do some palliative work to heal the wound. But if we allow it to get out of hand and we see bombings across the Niger Delta, vandalizations across the Niger Delta, that is very, very bad for us.
Well, Mr. Femi Oladile, financial expert, will continue to monitor the developments in Rivers State. Many thanks for lending your thoughts on the program. Well, that's it on this episode of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Okbayemi Owosheni. See you next time.